Hello, and welcome to another Range unit of the week. And today we're taking a look at the ZIS-3 anti-tank slash artillery gun. So the ZIS-3, like many Russian designs of the time, was a pretty simple and reliable design. They essentially just got the 76mm field gun from the F-22 and put it on a ZIS-2 carriage, and modified it of course, and that's how the ZIS-3 was made. It would enter into service in 1941, though it really wouldn't see major service till 1942. A lot of the early models from 41 would end up being captured during the initial stages of Barbarossa, but by 1942 it would become the standard field gun for pretty much all Soviet armies and replace the older F-22 models. And for very good reason, because it was a fantastic design. It was very simple to make, so they could make a lot of them with very basic equipment. And they did make a lot of them, over 100,000 to be exact. It was fairly easy to train crewmen how to use, and it was also a pretty useful dual-purpose gun, as it could be used as an anti-tank gun, and it had pretty decent anti-tank gun properties, especially in the 1942 period, where you're mainly just dealing with Panzer IVs and Panzer IIIs. Of course, when heavier German armour came along, it did not fare as well against them. But you gotta realise that heavy armour was pretty few and far between, and also it could be used as a field gun slash artillery gun, which is pretty much the same thing for dealing with soft targets. Also, it was a rather light rate gun thanks to the use of the ZIS-2 carriage, meaning that it could be easily transported around and heck even moved by crew. And funnily enough, to no one's surprise, the Germans captured a bunch of these, and they would end up using quite a lot of these field guns in their own service. In-game, the ZIS-3 is a 50-point anti-tank gun, available to pretty much every single Russian division in the game. There might be one or two that don't have it, but looking at that list, it seems to be pretty inclusive. And well, it has a single gun. So the gun itself is the gun itself, and you have 3 different ammunition types. You have 8 APCR shells, 40 armor penetration shells, and 13 high explosive shells. So let's talk about this. So the regular AP shells are alright. 105mm of penetration is mediocre to say the least, but you got good penetration, you got a pretty decent rate of fire at 10 rounds a minute, especially for a 76mm gun, and also 40% accuracy, so not too bad. The APCR shells are a bit better in armor penetration and accuracy, but of course you are losing that damage on penetration, meaning you're less likely to one-shot a tank when penetrating. You lose a little bit of rate of fire, but they're pretty good, these APCR shells, and you also have 8 of them, which is pretty generous for shells of its quality. And then you got the high explosive shells. You don't have many, and it does say it has infinite range, and that's true because you're shooting this as an artillery gun when firing the high explosive. 3.8 damage for HE is decent. It's not going to be blowing anything up in one hit, but you can get some decent suppression at least. Up down from miscellaneous stats, it has a 6-man crew with good optics, medium stealth, and light cargo space. In battle, as this is not one of those ubiquitous Russian units that you're going to be seeing a lot of, such as 45mm tank guns, Stroking Guard Squads, T-34s. It's just a very common piece of equipment. And for being a very common piece of equipment, it's alright. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's definitely not terrible. You are getting your money's worth for 50 points, as it's pretty much a mid-range anti-tank gun. Think of it like a Pak-38, where it's not going to be blowing up super heavy tanks, but for the majority of medium armored targets you're going to come across, such as Panzer IVs and Stugs, yes, the ZIS-3 can pretty easily blow them up. And it has a lot of ammunition for blowing stuff up, and you do have APCR shells, which are nice. They're not the best armor penetration, of course, but you do have the possibility of penetrating Tigers and Panthers with them, especially if they do get a little bit close to you. It's an alright anti-tank gun, all things considering in that part. The interesting thing, however, is its high explosive capabilities, because it also acts as an artillery gun. You don't have a lot of high explosive shells, of course, but the ability to be able to shoot over cover and try to hit a pesky enemy unit, such as an anti-tank gun, is a very nice feature to have on a gun like this. But it also comes with a pretty big downfall, and that is, well, if you're buying a ZIS-3, you're probably buying it first and foremost to be an anti-tank gun. because you want to blow up tanks. I'm hoping that's right by ZIS-3 anyway. So you're going to have it somewhere on the front line hidden in the forest. If you start using it as an artillery gun in that position, you're just going to give a real position, and then you're going to get blown up by a pretty standard off-map artillery or enemy tanks. So if you are going to use it as an artillery gun, you really do need to pull it back out the front line and, you know, start blasting away. But that's not too terrible. I mean, if you are using it in a forest, before you decide to, you know, start lobbing high explosive shells, back it up deeper into the forest a bit, and then start lobbing them so you don't get killed by direct fire. But you still may get yourself exposed to being spotted and getting hit by a counter battery attack. It's alright in all those roles. It's an alright anti-tank gun, it's an alright artillery gun, but the ability to have both in a 50-point package is not bad. And I also want to give a shout out to the German version of this gun, the captured one, as you do lose the APCR shells, but more importantly, you gain the radio trait, turning this from a mediocre artillery gun to a very good artillery gun, as all the German leaders of radios are going to get very accurate shots. And just like with the regular ZIS-3, you can use this to kill enemy anti-tank guns and other targets of immediate interest into stopping your forces from taking the front line. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a ZIS-3, it's a ZIS-2, but where's the ZIS-1? And well, I'm going to leave it off. Yeah, this has been another Rank Rouge Unit of the Week. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, please just take it easy.